Welcome to another edition of Explore Grant County. It's our election coverage, and I am happy to have with me this evening Charles Shreve. Charles, how are you doing?
Doing great, JR. Doing great.
Thank you for coming on. It's election time. We're getting down here to the nitty gritty. I mean, when you hit May, you're getting close. So why don't you start off for people that might not know you? What are you running for? Tell a little bit about yourself.
All right. So my name is Charles Shreve, running as Grant County Board of Education candidate for the Union District. I have lived here off and on. I was a Petersburg High School graduate in 2001. Went to school, started going to school here in 4th grade. My dad was in the military, so we traveled around before then. But all in all, we graduated here in 2001. I left to go to college. At that point, I was like, just get out of here. Let's leave. Whatever. Get away from hometown. Let's go see what the big city's life's like. I didn't want to do your normal everyday college where I go to sermons and speeches and listen, all that stuff. So found a technical college in Arizona, moved to Arizona, went to school for 2 years, got my associate's degree, came back home with an opportunity for a job that fell through. So at that point, I worked at McDonald's, did your typical everyday high school job. Really is what I did. Ended up moving away again because I ran into my wife now. Moved to Ohio with her. Lived there for a couple years. I don't know, probably we were married in 2004 and moved back in 2007. Moved in with my grandma. At that point, I got my bachelor's degree in information technology. At that point, I said, well, I've got my degree. Might as well figure out how business works. So I got a master's in business administration. And then I got a job eventually at the hospital. I've been there for the last 11 years, whatever. I've got a kid currently that's graduated. He's a freshman in high school now, freshman in college at Potomac State. I've got a freshman in high school. I've got a junior at high school and a 4th grader. So they're going to Petersburg High School in Maysville currently.
You got some nice spread out years there.
We do, yep. I'm in it for the long haul. So, but then at the hospital, there came a time where there was some trouble at the hospital. They lost the finance director. We went through a couple of those, and the chief executive officer, she was leaving, so I went back to school, got a master's in hospital administration too. So business is something I can look at, and I don't use it all the time, but I'm involved. People ask me my opinion about a lot of stuff. So during these years, though, I've also worked as I helped the PTO out at Maysville. So I was a president at Maysville PTO for a couple years. I was the president of not Petersburg, but Potomac Highlands Soccer League for a couple years, for a year and a half. And then I also have been the president of the Petersburg High School Athletic Boosters Club for the last 4 years now. So some of those were overlapping. At one time, I was all three of them at once. So I stayed really, really busy, staying involved with the kids as much as possible. I just want to see the kids succeed in whatever we can do. So people ask me, because my dad was one, he told me initially, he said, don't go to the boosters meeting. He said, you don't want that job. And I did it anyways. I went and we did it. And at that point, I took the president position. People have asked me, why do I continue to do that? Why do I keep giving in my time and donating my time? And part of that is one of the things that I've heard from some kids and some teachers is that some of these kids, they escape from home life to come to school. Sometimes the only meals they get are whatever they get during breakfast and lunch at school, and their dinner may come from a concession stand. And because of that, we've built in my opinion, a nice concession stand. We hear compliments from all over the country, all over the state from when people travel to us. They say we have one of the best concession stands they've seen. But I do it because I care about these kids and I want them to have the opportunities. Another opportunity that I brought to the kids as well was that when I was at Maysville, we were trying to figure out the end of school year reward. It was right before COVID or right after. Yeah, I think it was right before COVID. Might have been right after COVID. Somewhere in that area. Had to be before, I guess. The amusement parks were closed down. And so normally we would go to the amusement park for the end of the year reward. And because it was closed down there, we were trying to figure out what we were going to do. I'm a America's Got Talent fan on TV.
Yeah.
And Stephen Brundage was a Rubik's Cube magician. He had went to the finals. He was a finalist. And I said, why don't we see if we can bring him here? I knew he was from the eastern side of the United States. And everybody thought I was crazy. It was going to cost us about the same amount of money as if we took the kids to the amusement park. But I reached out. He had one available date opening that was on the date that we needed. And I brought him in.
Nice.
And he did Rubik's Cube magic for the kids. We bought some Rubik's Cubes for the kids, and they got them signed by him. They got to keep them. And, he taught them a couple tricks or tried to teach them some tricks and show them, hey, here's how I'm going to do it. See if you can catch when I do it. And nobody could catch him. Like, he was just that quick with everything that he did. But, again, I do it because of the kids. I want to see the kids succeed, have these opportunities. Some of these kids don't leave this area. They're stuck here. And it's frustrating to see. So my thought is if I can help succeed and make these kids succeed and learn stuff and grow, that's what I want to do. One of the other thing that I've noticed is that some of these kids, they don't realize how much well, I shouldn't say they don't. I don't realize how much support they get, or how much what I do supports them sometimes, to where sometimes they come back and they're like, hey, thanks for doing this for me. And at that moment, it's just, I'm doing my job. Like, I don't think anything more about it. But then they'll come back and thank me, or I'll hear my kids talking, saying, hey, yeah, my friends were saying this and this and this about you. And I'm like, okay, like, cool. All good things, never anything bad. But they say they don't get that a lot, and we need to be those people. I've always said that these kids have to be our priority. And I say that because these kids are going to be our future. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to be taken care of by somebody. When I have these kids in the concession stand and I ask them to count money back, they look at me like I'm crazy. So sometimes we teach how to count money back, and they're like, well, we can't do that. That doesn't make any sense. I'm like, well, it's not hard, but it's simple math that they should know. We've talked a couple other things. Like, I've been in the LSIC committee, which is the local school improvement council meetings for Maysville, and I've started recently going to Petersburg. And one of the things that they've talked about is making sure these kids understand, the things they need for life, like counting them, keeping a checkbook, or your finance, your register for your bank account, or how does a loan affect you? Like, I know when I got to my school loans, I didn't think anything about it growing up.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'll borrow all this money. I have all this money I can do, whatever. It's not the way it works. You got to pay it back sometime. So that's a little bit about me. Okay. And the little things that I do to help these kids out. So, and yeah.
Awesome. So one thing I did forget to mention for people that are tuning into our election coverage, we have the same questions for every candidate to make it fair.
Yep.
And then sometimes a response will lead into another question. But you kind of gave us a little bit about yourself. But going in for the Board of Education for Union District, what do you think your qualifications are, or what makes you uniquely qualified for that position? It kind of dovetails a little bit with what you said. So
it does. The only qualifications that I'm not going to say I've ever been a board member. I've not been an educator. I haven't, but I've been involved in the school systems for years now, and I've seen the way things work. I know when I first started with Maysville PTO, one of the things we had to do was not all of our like Maysville, parent-teacher organizations and any booster clubs or organizations are all considered school support organizations. They operate separately, independently of the school, but they run under the umbrella of the school system.
Oh, okay.
And they're all monitored by the school system. So you still have to go and get your 501c3 your tax ID number for these organizations separately, and you still have to file your taxes separately. So that was something that wasn't being done initially. So I worked hand in hand with Tony initially to start that process for something that was at one point done, but nobody knew that and wasn't ever passed on. So we got Maysville PTO set back up, and then at that time, the athletic boosters also went through the same change. So, but I was kind of involved with it, even though I wasn't with them at the moment. They had asked some questions back and forth. So, just the years that I've worked with these school support organizations, I feel is probably the best qualification I can get, because I've worked with the principals, I've worked with the students and the teachers, and I've seen the way things operate, and I know a little bit with the board office. And I mean, other than the understanding that I have of a board member is you hire and fire a superintendent, which if the superintendent's not right, that's what you do. And then we enact policies. So if policies aren't being followed, we need to figure out why they're not being followed and make sure that we enforce them, so that we can make sure we keep these kids safe and organized and, moving along and learning what they need to learn, because they need to follow the procedures and protocols that are in place.
Okay.
So
now we're moving on to topics that people have messaged us. When we said we were starting this, we had questions messages. And this is, I guess, it's sad to me, but this question is brought up so much. And I'd love to, be able to stamp this out, and that is bullying. What do we do? How do we combat it? What are your thoughts?
So bullying is always, I hate to say, it's always going to be around. I don't think there's any way to ever get rid of it totally. Part of the issues that we see in today's world is that some kids say they're being bullied when it's not really being bullied. So when I was in school, I could make a comment to you real quick. It was just something to pick on you for just a second, and we move on about our daily basis.
Did you just call me bald?
I did not, but I could have. But I run into this with my kids too, and so sometimes I'm like, look, bullying has to be a consistent thing. It's not just a one-time event. It has to be something. Does it happen every day at lunchtime, or does it happen every couple hours, or does it happen every week at the same time? Or there's got to be a pattern of some sort to it. But we have policies and procedures in place, and what we have to make sure is that we follow the chain of command when we do this. So if it's happening in a classroom, we need to talk to the teacher first. If the teacher doesn't give the response that we want, then we go to the principal.
Okay.
And if the principal doesn't give the response that you want, you go to the superintendent. If the superintendent still doesn't get the response, and your kid's still having the issues, and it's still an issue, and it's not been resolved at that point, then you make a request to speak to the Board of Ed or to the board members. Okay. If you skip any step along the path, or I know, I was thinking, well, I can just go directly to a board member for something, and ask them what they think. But if you skip anything along the path, the board members' hands are tied. They can't actually do anything until it goes through all the proper channels first. And the other part that I've learned, and I've recently learned this as well, is that if a board member hears about an issue that needs to be brought before the board prior to the board hearing it as a whole, they have to actually excuse themselves because they have prior knowledge of the incident.
So that's good information. So what you're saying is, don't go to a board member before the proper chain, because then their hands are tied.
Right.
They have to recuse themselves. And
yeah.
Okay. So I didn't know that. So
so if you trust me really much and you want me to bring it to the board, I can go and request information, but I can't be part of any of that conversation after the fact. And it sucks, because if I'm one that you really trust and you really want me to be part of that conversation and be an advocate for your kid, I can't be that advocate anymore at that point.
So I'm going off script here now, just because, and you might not know, but is that a school policy, county policy, state policy?
I don't know at the moment. That's something that I've recently learned. I'm going to figure it out exactly where it's at, because I want to know 100%.
Because I would like to think you could go to anyone. I mean, if you're a kid that's being bullied, and I guess we could try to figure out what the definition of bullying really is. Is it just name calling, even if it's every day, or is it physical? What is that? But and I'm like, oh, Charles, I'm just having really problem. It would be nice if you could help. Right. But
at that point,
that's weird to me.
You can say you can, but if you don't give me any information, that's one thing. But as soon as you give me a piece of information, my understanding is I have to recuse myself at that point, because the board members are supposed to hear it as a board as a whole. The same process is when you go to a board meeting and you sign up to speak, there's not supposed to be, and this is everything that I've always understood about any board, you can share your concern to the board as a whole, but there is not supposed to be any rebuttal from any board member at that point. And that, to me, that includes the superintendent. There shouldn't be any conversation back because the board has not actually added it to the agenda to talk about it, and they need to be able to discuss as a whole and have their thoughts together about the subject before they come back. Okay. So that way I'm not speaking on behalf of the board, but it's really my personal opinion.
Gotcha.
And sometimes that's hard. I've spoke to the board before, and I'm like, look, this is my concern. What are you going to do about it? And they just all look at you. It sucks because I'm like, can't you say something? Well, in reality, somebody can say, yes, we will look into that and we'll get back to you. But that's it. And that's not the answer I want half the time. When I go to the board, I want something better.
Yeah.
But that's the correct correct procedure because you want the board to be together as a whole. And I'm not telling you one thing, then you go and talk to Joe Bob Smo from the other board member and say, oh, yeah, well, this is what we're going to do instead. And now we have two stories from two different board members.
So does the board, and you might not know this either, but it just came. So does the board then discuss privately that, or is that still like, is like all board discussions? I know that they go into executive session and, but if it's something like that, how do they discuss it?
It gets added to the agenda, and as long as there's no names of any student or staff, it can be public discussion.
Okay.
Once there is a name provided that has to be discussed physically, and hey, we're going to talk about X, Y, and Z. Now you go into executive session.
Yeah. Or it can be, I think the one meeting I went to, it was like student 1-432.
Yeah, you can give a nickname to it or something. Yeah.
Okay.
But you don't want to we don't want to say, oh, my daughter was out now and she's now blown across the public world because of something that went on.
Okay, so advice for bullying, chain of command, very important. Work your way up.
100%. Yep. Okay. And I've always said that if you don't get the answer, don't stop because you have to move up the chain of command. That's something I learned when I was in school, and it's the junior ROTC program that was there. So what we always said, we had a whole chain of command we had to follow before it ever got to the instructor. So if you didn't follow your chain of command up, the instructor would say, look, go back and talk. You got to go through the command. You got to go through the proper channels before it can get there. And so that's what we need to do. Go through the proper channels and don't stop until you get the result. Now, maybe the result is... maybe it's not bullying, and if that's really what it is, and you can ask for further clarification, and that's okay because it's like going to the doctor. If you don't like what the doctor says, you go get a second opinion, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it comes back as the same thing. My mom had that happen. She went to the doctor. She didn't like it. She went to a second opinion. She got the same response. Might have happened a little bit faster than what she was, thought she was going to get initially, but in the long run, it was the same answer.
Okay.
So,
next one, school safety. Okay, it's a big topic. It's on the levy.
Yep.
How do we deal with it? How do we help? Because obviously we want the kids to be safe.
Yep.
So what's your thoughts on that? What do we do?
So school safety is multifaceted because when you come to school safety, you've got school hours, then you've got after school activities, and those after school activities go into who knows what hours. So we want to make sure our kids are safe no matter where they're at. Some of this involves making sure maybe the kids stay for weightlifting or something. We want to make sure that there's an adult there ready until all the kids are picked up and go home. I don't know if that happens all the time now from what I've seen. I don't think it does all the time anymore. I remember when I was in school, I remember staying after school many hours because my dad was waiting on a parent to come pick up a kid. Sometimes he used to give a ride home. You can't do that now. So, PRO officer, well, I don't know what PRO stands for. I don't even know where that came from. I've tried to figure out what PRO stands for. Maybe you do. But
honestly, no one's ever asked, and in all of our discussions, we've never...
I know them as SRO officers, which is a school resource officer.
Okay.
So, like I said, I don't know where the P ever came from. I wish if somebody knows.
It's not a police resource officer. That seems too basic. Who knows?
If it is, okay, so be it. But I know them as school resource officers. I feel that they have been a drastic change in our schools. just because these kids now look up to somebody, know that they're there. So if something starts, it used to be like if I wanted to bring a knife into school, if I wanted to bring cigarettes into the school, it's not a big deal. Well, now if you're under 18 and they're there, you're now in the law. Like you're in the court system, whatever the case may be. So making sure our kids are safe, that's 100% accurate. We need to make sure we do it. We need to make sure we meet all the requirements by the state. Sometimes, I don't think we would argue on this, but sometimes the state requirements don't make sense. But they are required, and if we want to keep the funding from the state, we have to implement some of their policies and procedures. So, but making sure that we do everything in our power. I know when we open our concession stands, and we have kids that are down, sometimes we'll use the classrooms across from the cafeteria at the high school for dressing rooms. My dad and I, my dad did it, but we used it. He came up with it and asked my opinion about it, and we asked the principal. We made a rope that sections off that says, hey, you need escort from a school admin at 5 o'clock. So trying to keep kids from running down around the school, because nobody needs to be in the school building after a certain period of time. Now, if you're there running with your team, you're running around the halls because of that, okay, so be it. But you're monitored. You're being watched by your coaches. But making sure that our kids are being watched over, there's somebody there for them, making sure they're not left alone, put in awkward positions. Growing up, the policy that we've always had is as a single male person, you don't put yourself in the same room with a single female. Sometimes that's hard. And I get it. In today's world, especially if you're working or something, you might be stuck in the same room, but you try your darndest not to do it.
I remember they made fun of the vice president when he said he would not be in a car alone with a female staffer, and they all just, you're old-fashioned and all this stuff. But we follow that policy totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And same thing with an adult. One adult should not be with one kid. Regardless of the sex of the kid, one adult should not be with one kid. It should be at least 2 deep leadership. That's a policy I've learned growing up. I try to stick with it as much as possible. Sometimes it might be me and one of my kids with me, waiting on somebody else to be there, but at least I've got a second person there. I try to keep extra people around if we can. Even when my dad helps out, if there's a female helping us in the concession stand and my dad's helping, it's me, him, and her, he won't be in a concession stand alone with her. We just don't do it. So our kids should take the same policies, and we should make sure that we're implementing the same things. I know that a lot of your school shootings probably don't happen in the school. I think you all talked about that a little bit on one of your videos.
Yeah, I think the number was 80% outside of the school.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we make sure we keep people outside monitoring what's going on outside. If kids know you're around, they're not going to be as apt to try something when there's an adult around. And I've noticed that a lot. Like a lot of times I'm in the school building way before the kids or coaches show up. And they have learned that they aren't going to act up when I'm around. And they keep their cool a lot when somebody else is around. But as soon as the adults are, the saying is when the cat's away, the mice will play. It happens in school. When my kid started middle school football, he never played football in his life. And he went to weightlifting. And before the adult was in the room, he said they were cussing up a storm and everything else. And we don't believe in that. We don't believe to cussing a lot. We might have some words that fly once in a while because we get so mad and frustrated and they just come out. But we try not to.
We're human.
Right. So when he heard that, he's like, I'm done. He quit playing football probably 6 times between not understanding what was going on at practice or nobody was giving him information or kids were cussing and he didn't want to be around that. But now he's going on his 4th year. He'll be a senior next year. He's going to finish the year out playing football. He doesn't actually get a lot of playing time. But he's determined that he's at least going to stick it out and put in that 4th year, and he enjoys every bit of it.
Good.
So, but that safety feature definitely needs to be there. So
okay. Next up, someone questioned, what do you think about drug testing for all personnel? I think they do it with the bus drivers now, I believe. I could be wrong on that. I believe that's what someone had told us.
Okay.
But they said for all personnel. What are your thoughts?
If we drug test our students, we need to set the example, and we drug test our employees. To me, if I were doing drugs and I'm not allowed to be doing it, that's the chance you take. And you might be that randomly picked person that happens. And to me, we drug test our kids randomly. Our staff should be the same way. I don't think we should set, hey, at the first of every school year, we're going to drug test you. Because it's like an OSHA survey. Oh, OSHA's coming, make everything perfect. Well, that's cool. We can make everything perfect, but what good does that do? That doesn't show the true issue we may be having. So I'm all for it. I don't know what the policies or procedures are for that right now. And it'll have to be something, teachers are covered by unions. And
wait, we're not allowed to call them unions.
Oh, okay.
They're associations.
Okay. You know something I don't know.
Yeah, because there is no teacher union.
Okay.
There's a teacher association.
All right. Well, teacher association, even still, they have their association members that they can contact. So the last thing I want to do is make sure we do something that causes us to lose all of our teachers, because we're short-staffed as it is now. Which goes back to school safeties too. That's something I've learned a lot is we've got admin covering classrooms because we don't have staff.
So what can be, I know this is not what can be done about that? What do we do?
Well, we have to figure out a way that we can recruit staff. And that's not easy when it's a statewide problem. So in my mind, I've been thinking about this for a while, how do we get teachers to Grant County? Currently, we have people that travel to Pendleton County. Why do they go to Pendleton and not work local? I don't know. I'd like to know some, I've asked a couple people and they've never really they like it where they're at, or they've been there for a while. I don't think it's money, because the state assigns the policy of how much we pay teachers. Like, these are the set pay schedules. Mineral County, I know they have a levy that they run, and they include teacher pay in that. So their teachers get X number of dollars more per pay period. But if that levy were ever to go away, I'd hate to be the admin down there or the board that says, hey, so the levy didn't pass this year, we're taking that money away from you this year because we don't have it in our budget to cover. Now, maybe they can cover it. I don't know. But I know that that's where they sit at now. So I don't know the answer to that. I've been thinking about that for a while, because I'd like to know, how can we get qualified, good teachers here? And get it to where we don't have to be short-staffed all the time. I mean, do we tell teachers, well, you can't take vacation that you rightfully have on your like, if my employer told me I can't take vacation,
not going to go over well. Yeah.
So when we have, say, 5 teachers out that were on planned vacation, and then say we have 4 or 5 other teachers that get sick, now we have, up to 10 teachers out, and we don't have the staffing to cover, so then admin have to cover classes. Or you send those kids to another classroom, or hope and pray we can find a sub that can come in, and we're short subs sometime too. Or are we short subs because they don't want to work for the school system? I don't know all the answers to that, and I wish I had a better answer, but we need to figure out a way to do that. And when somebody leaves, let's find out why they're leaving so we can fix that. If it's a money issue, maybe it's not something we can fix. If it's, I would hate to say an admin issue, but if it is an admin issue, we need to fix it. So.
Okay. School uniforms. Someone asked that. They were like, bring back school uniform. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not going to say I'm a proponent of it because it's extra cost. What I would say with school uniforms is, yes, if we brought school uniforms in, we wouldn't have to worry about a dress code issue, or we would think, right?
Yeah.
Kids these days, oh, I don't like this, I'm going to rip it. Okay, now we got to go, and now we got to take care of a uniform that's been ripped and needs replaced. Now we're going to have to fight with the parents. Hey, your kid ripped it, they got to pay for it. So is it an option? Probably not. Would it be something that would make our kids look good? Yeah. I mean, I remember when I was in school, if you went had a game that day, the guys wore dress shirts and ties and dress pants. You came in looking nice. It's not so much anymore. Now you have a game, you look like you did, like everybody else. But I'd like to go back to some of that stuff. And even dress codes are hard to.
Yeah, I think
to implement.
And I don't know if I'm 100% right on this, but I've just heard the kids talking like for shorts, the length of your arm or something. what if you have really long arms, and what if you have really short arms?
So, growing up, our policy was always your shorts had to go to your knees. That was what we grew up with. I'm not a huge short person, but when I wear my shorts, I want them to go to my knees. That's just, I feel comfortable that way.
Last call-in question, like we're on radio here. God in schools.
Listen, if you believe in God, I do, that's on you. That's perfectly fine. I have no problem with it. The only thing I don't want to do is force anybody to do something that they don't want to do. So if a team wants to pray, I'm okay with it. But I don't expect you to force every player to pray with you. If you've got a kid that doesn't believe in God and doesn't want to pray, and he wants to step away, they should be allowed to do that. Some of the greatest quotes, in my opinion, come from scriptures. And they're some of the most uplifting quotes. And even if you don't believe in God, they can be uplifting. So I'm okay with God in schools in any way, shape, or form, as long as we're not forcing people to do things that they don't want to do. And if that's happening, okay, then let's stop and rethink what's going on. When I was in Arizona, and I hate bringing up this, but I learned a lot of lessons while I was out there. That was my first example around people that are part of the LGBTQ community. Prior to that, I was probably around people and I had no clue anything about it because I was, I'll say, blinded by it. I've never seen it. But out there I did. And the agreement that we all had when we worked with each other was, you have your agreement, your beliefs, we have my beliefs. We work together, but we don't push anything on each other. Some of the best people I worked with. And it worked because we didn't push things on each other. So if teachers want to bring God in, that's fine. We just can't force people to do it. So
okay. Final question. This is the toughest one. Why do I vote for Charles Shreve for Board of Education?
This is the easiest answer for me. As crazy as it is, I'm not telling you to vote for me. If you feel you need to vote, if you feel that I'm the right person for the job, then vote for me. If you don't. It's as simple as that. If you think that the time that I've put in and volunteered to help these kids out, and you think I really shouldn't be around your kid, and you think I shouldn't be making decisions for your kid, please don't vote for me then. I don't want you to put me in just because I'm asking you for my vote. I want you to put me in because you think I'm the right person for the job. I want you to put me in because you think that I can stand up and advocate for your kids and do what's right and help bring everything up to par where it should be. And that you think that I can do that. Not because I've said, please vote for me. So.
Okay. Charles, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Voting May 14th.
May 14th.
Right?
Early vote starts May 1st.
Yes, May 1st.
Yep.
Early voting.
If you're an early voter, May 1st. If not, May 14th at the polls.
May 14th.
I'm a person to go to the polls personally. I don't like the early vote.
Yep. I like going to the polls.
I like to go see the poll
something
workers.
about,
yep.
We used to say pulling the lever. They don't have the lever anymore, but it's touch screen.
No, I'm still paper.
Oh, you still do paper?
Still paper.
Oh, okay.
I'm a technology guy, but I still paper.
So. Okay. So there you go.
Yep.
Explore Grant County. I believe this is part 5 of our election coverage. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a great night.